Hello and welcome again to the Habits and Healthspan and Amway podcast. I'm Alyssa. I'm here with my partner in crime, John, and we have some extra special guests today.
That's right. Today with us, we have Jesse Leverett and Dr. Gary Fisher, who are going to be walking us through skincare and skin health, which personally I'm super excited learning about. I'm probably like some of our listeners who right now, in terms of caring for their skin, are doing nothing. And I'm hoping that you'll tell me that that's what I should keep doing, but I'm guessing that there's probably a lot that I could learn. So super excited to be talking with both of you today.
Yes. Tell us a little bit, Dr. Gary Fisher, about your background and your connections with Amway, et cetera.
I'm professor of dermatology at the University of Michigan Medical School. I've been on the faculty there since the last century, for some years now. And we've been investigating molecular mechanisms of aging, trying to understand the basic fundamental biology that causes skin to age. And I've been consulting with Amway for probably 15 years.
I think it's over now, but yeah.
More than 15 years, yeah. So we've done a lot together, and I think we've made some progress, and we've helped some people. And so it's been a really good relationship.
Well, Dr. Fisher, thank you so much for being on the show today. We're super excited to be learning from literally the professor about this.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Jesse Leverett here with us. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I have the best job in the world. So my title is fellow. And at Amway, basically, that means you're just like the oldest guy there. So I've been doing this for quite a while, at the same as Gary. I started out on the product side. And then, about 20 years ago, I switched over to what they call open innovation. So my title is Fellow Open Innovation. What that means is that we work with external entities like universities and small startups to kind of see what they have and could we bring it into our product line. And it's been fantastic. I love my job because I get to work with guys like Gary. I also manage our scientific advisory board across all the different categories. And it helps me to kind of understand, a total picture. When I'm looking at skin and then internal as well, these guys are doing that real work to show how, what goes wrong over time. And then once we understand that, we can start to figure out, what can we do about it? Is there a solution for that? And that's the fun part, kind of making that translation. It's not all, we're not all doomed.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Before we sort of ask you our first questions, I actually have a multiple choice question for Alyssa. What is the skin's largest organ, Alyssa? Do you know, is it A, the small intestine, B, the skin, or C, the tongue?
John, you just said, what is the skin's largest organ?
Well, I gave it
so
away.
So you gave it away!
So yes, well, we're going to be talking about the biggest organ, the skin.
The skin, which, okay, to be fair, I don't know if I would have known that right off the bat.
It's one of those things that you learn in middle school, and unless you're the professionals, you might cast away and forget.
Maybe I did.
So we're going to turn it over to you guys, the experts. Inside of the skin function, what is the skin doing for the body as the whole? Since it is the largest organ, what exactly is it doing?
A simple answer is it keeps the inside in and the outside out. And it's evolved to be a really good protective barrier. It protects against environmental damage, even though it itself can be damaged by the environment. It has a very robust wound healing response. It also is a primary perception organ. So we all know we can feel touch, we can feel heat, we can feel pain. So it's directly connected through the central nervous system to the brain. And so it acts to tell us where we are in the world and protect us from the outside.
I love that. I think not only is it maybe the largest organ, but it's also one of the organs that's doing the most based on what you're just saying.
Well, that's a lot.
We have a lot to we have a lot to dig into there.
Yeah. So in light of that, how can we treat skin as the vital organ that it is?
It's important that skin remain healthy. Barrier is an obvious site that needs to be maintained. Barrier function to keep the outside out, inside in. And then we're learning more and more about the interaction between skin and other organs, what we call systemic interactions. There's a communication system through the blood that the skin can directly communicate with other organs. So it produces factors, primarily proteins, that reach the blood and then circulate throughout the body and cause responses in all other organs. So it's all part of the human living system.
It sounds like there's a lot of back and forth between the two. You mentioned how the skin is communicating with the internal organs. Can you kind of talk about the relationship there? And I guess what I'm really kind of looking for is what is your research, and in that research, what are the sort of like worst results that you're seeing? Not that we're doomed. There's an answer, but that maybe we are going to try and avoid as we're talking about that communication between skin and what's going on inside.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond that even. I think, it's, like Gary talked about, there's the basics too. We have to, make sure that we keep those in mind. Basic barrier function. People get dry skin. When the skin gets dry, that barrier gets disrupted. When that barrier just gets disrupted, then it's more porous to these things that Gary's talking about. And so even the simple things that we forget about, like moisturizing the skin, making sure that we're not too harsh with it, abrasive, using great products, super important, because when you don't do that, the barrier gets disrupted, things can penetrate. And so a lot of times we want to think about kind of the new findings and so forth, but sometimes we forget that, there's the basics we got to keep in mind too. And I think that's a great thing too.
I love how you grounded it in like the dry skin. What are some other just everyday occurrences, or maybe not every day if people are maintaining their skin, that people can go, oh, wait a second, something might be happening here?
Dry skin is a primary sign of a potential skin problem that might go deeper than skin. People commonly have rashes. Their skin is red in certain spots, itchy, redness, feeling of tightness or discomfort are signs that there's a problem within the skin, but potentially also with deeper than the skin, that the skin is reacting to something that is going on within the body itself, that is a sign of some problem that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing to me, though, too, that stands out is, having spent a lot of time with Gary and kind of learning from him, and one of the primary contributors to what we think of as aging of the skin, we're switching that kind of thinking to from aging to healthiness, kind of a state of how healthy the skin is. But if you think about it in terms of aging, because that's still kind of where people, their mindsets are, and they can picture in their mind what that looks like. They do at the university biopsies. They can take samples of the skin, investigate it, look to see what's inside from a molecular biology standpoint. And it's quite interesting when you look at we call it sun-exposed skin. Skin that's exposed to the sun or to the exposome, so pollution, other things like that, compared to skin that's protected. So areas that you generally wear clothes and things. Looking at those samples, those protected spots sometimes appear to be maybe even up to decades, I won't say younger, but maybe decades healthier. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's something that's just fascinating too, because we generally think it's all the same. So when you talk about what other factors, there's dry skin, that can be full body, but things like exposure to the environment, we call it fancy term as exposome, everything minus your genetics, can have a significant driving effect to, decreasing that health. And Gary's really diving into that area as well.
That's fascinating. So I hear you saying that the skin can actually signal the deeper needs inside your body, that something else is going on. Can you describe the scientific basis of that connection between skin health and overall health that you're talking about?
As we mentioned, the skin communicates with other organs. The primary, probably the most significant damaging effect that people experience from the environment is sunlight. We all know we go out in the sun. Too much sun, our skin turns red, feels bad. But even, going past that point, spending the whole day out in the sun can cause something that is similar to flu-like symptoms. If you get enough redness over your body from the sun, it's not just, your skin is red and uncomfortable, but it's as if you're sick. And that's the skin communicating with the rest of the body, because it produces many, many factors that influence the overall health of the body. In general, skin damage produces factors, whether it's local or whole body damage to the skin, that signals to the rest of the body that there's a problem. And it's related to inflammation. Internal inflammation is the cause of many types of diseases and pathologies, and feeling bad is driven by inflammatory processes, which is the body reacting in a way that it thinks it's protecting itself, but in the long run can be damaging.
So guys, I just kind of want to point out that when we think about kind of where we used to be, we're really thinking more about the appearance of the skin, and kind of looking at aging and kind of what happens when you eat things, or, what's happening internally and how that can affect the skin. At some point too, we want to think about, in the scheme of, Healthspan, when we think about that, schematic. In general, when you think about Healthspan, you're dealing with two kinds of domains. One is the physical component, physical health. The other is the mental or psychological well-being. And I think that's a really important part as well, that other organs don't play, in that people are, pretty concerned about, the skin and how that conveys who they are, how they want other people to see them, and so forth. And so that really, I think, out of many other organs, if we think about just health, the skin is an eye into the inside, and an eye into how you present yourself, and weighs heavily on the psychological well-being, good or bad, both ways. And I think that's something also that we consider when we do these products, and it's pretty important.
So if I'm listening to this podcast right now, I'm going, okay, number one, sunlight, look out. Take the proper precautions, start taking care of it. But you mentioned exposomes, everything minus genetics. We're talking a lot about sunlight, but I'm just curious, what are some of the other factors that maybe the listener should be thinking about in terms of, okay, this is another sort of environmental circumstance that there's steps that I can take to help mitigate, to help my skin's health span?
Second in line is pollution, air pollution, air quality. It's becoming perhaps worse as the planet ages, depending on location. But skin being exposed to the air is also impacted in either a positive or a negative way by the quality of that air. So pollution, particles from industrial activities, car exhaust and such, we all live in that environment, and although it can't be seen by us under normal circumstances, hopefully, it does make contact with the skin and can cause skin to react in unhealthy ways.
We just published a paper with another one of our advisors, John Krutman at the IUF in Germany, and there are things that Gary's talking about, those other things, pollution, heat, humidity. So I think that the important part is that, we think broadly. Again, and just like Gary started off, your skin is the thing that's between you and the outside world, exposed to everything that you deal with day and night. And I guess the other part would be, a lot of times we don't think about, but when we think about exposome type things, usually it's physical things that we're concerned with. But the other things that fall into that camp would be, stress, psychological stress, like, I talked about the well-being component as well. That can, translate in the body to things like Gary was saying, these, chemical messengers that can upregulate inflammation as well. And we usually don't think about that piece. The other part too, I would say, on the exposome part is that it's not all bad either. They can be good. Like sunlight, converts, vitamin D, helpful for building bones and things. So, all of it's not, bad, but it's like anything, too much, can be an issue. So
That's really good to hear, because I was ready to advocate for wearing like an opaque bubble all the time, because if air is not good and sunlight's bad, then maybe it's the mom in me, but I'm like, oh, okay, now is when we put on the protective everything. But that's not what you're saying.
No. And Gary was talking about before, the skin has a lot of other sensors, as the largest organ of the body, but also is a very biologically active. So it can sense, the skin can see and hear and feel as well, smell. The skin has sensors that are equivalent to other, receptors in the body in different places. So there's some, research that talks about being exposed to green spaces, greenness that's good for us. Melatonin levels. There's a lot of melatonin produced in the skin. And so it's important, we don't just completely shut off from the outside world, but that's where research like what Gary's doing helps us discern between what is, helpful, what's not.
You kind of said something that I want to unpack just a little bit. You said the skin can hear and see and smell even. Can you unpack what exactly do you mean by that? I hear that, I'm like, okay, news to me. I took human anatomy senior year, but I don't remember that. Like, what do you mean by that? How did you all learn this?
So those senses are perceived by receptors, proteins that are designed to be sensitive to certain specific kinds of stimuli. Skin possesses a wide variety of those kinds of sensors throughout skin. And so that there is the possibility that it responds to not only sunlight, invisible sunlight, but also visible sunlight, the kind that we can see with our eyes. So in a sense, I think that's what Jesse's referring to. Skin, in that sense, has vision, like our eyes, because it has some of the same biology, fundamental biology, that allows for perception of those kinds of stimuli.
Because like Gary said, the skin to brain axis is strong, between those two things. And so, people can kind of, you can also get these kind of like happiness type feelings. We're dealing on, psychology side, people like the warmth, they like the, to be in the sun, those kinds of, spaces. And so you can get some benefit from those beyond, like I say, the vitamin D and things that people know about. But again, it's how often and how much is kind of the trigger. It's just like the dose of anything. If you do, too much is not a good thing. Gary just did a study. We did that 2 years ago now, which I find fascinating. We're still following up, and the results are just, I think they're super cutting edge. It's just open and cracking the door. We're not there to say this is the way it is or not yet. But this was dosing people with UVB light over a large part of their body at a level that was not a sunburn. This was below what you could detect with the eyes, but it still generated, like Gary said, these inflammatory markers in the blood. So it's not about one giant dose. Oh, I got a sunburn, bad. The other times it's not. But if you do even small amounts over and over and over again, that can add up. So it's kind of both, I think.
I remember when I was a kid at the pool, my mom's like, put on sunscreen. I go, it's cloudy. She's like, oh no, it still happens. I'm like,
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Your mom, she knew.
Smart woman.
Yeah.
Smart woman.
Yes.
All right. So you were talking a little bit earlier about how the skin health is not just about anti-aging, but it's about the other factors too. And you mentioned it's the that fancy word, exposomes, right? Uh-huh. Yep. And the other factors, but then also the social and mental impacts of things like stress and how that influences our skin. Talk a little bit about the cellular vitality, which is at the heart of skin's health span, and the research that you've done that tells us the different approaches we should take in light of cell vitality.
Yeah. So skin is the largest organ, and you hear that terms a lot. People think in terms of organs when you think about the body, as a heart, lungs, and so forth. But it's important to understand what an organ is, and an organ has subcomponents. That's not the smallest unit in the body. The organ is made up of different kinds of cells and their products. Their products are, the things that they, put out. They put out their own protein support networks and other things. And so the cells living inside of these tissues that are made up of these various proteins and so forth, connected to another type of cell type with their own types of support proteins, all together start to form what we think of as an organ. Now, at the basis of that, and the reason I bring this up is because you can't have a healthy organ, which contributes to a healthy body, for kind of going back down, without having healthy subcomponents. You have to have healthy cells living in a healthy environment, that sub-environment that they're living in. And so cell vitality is that concept of, when you think about vital, vital means basically life-giving functions. So that basic life-giving function. When you're born, it's two cells come together. There weren't tissues, there's not organs at that point. It's two cells, cellular vitality, coming together to build out the rest of it. And so that's happening on a daily basis. And Gary's lab has done a ton of research into understanding what cells are living there. It's mind-blowing. We used to think there were maybe a couple different types. Now he's telling me there's probably like 10 or 12. We didn't know that. And then that they're not all aging or becoming unhealthy at the same time. It's just like a community, like a city. From a biology approach, you think about all those things. And then how do we correct it if it goes wrong? But how do we keep it from happening? And so that's something that Gary's lab is doing a lot of work in that space right now on this cellular vitality piece and then the connection to the tissue they live in.
If you have people living in a house and you're looking at them from above and they're in the kitchen, they're cooking, they're doing whatever they're doing in their home, and those people are the cells, and the home is the environment that they live in. Okay, now a storm comes through, their roof collapses, their walls fall out, but they're fine, okay? But they're not cooking any longer because they can't get to the kitchen. They can't, get to their living room, their TV's broken. And so when you look at them, there's something wrong with these people. They're just not behaving properly. They're not able to be active. But in fact, there's nothing wrong with them per se. It's their environment no longer supports their activities. And so when we think about skin aging, that our perspective on that has a lot to do with what we call the microenvironment that the cells live in that dictates to a large extent their function. Skin is largely what's referred to as connective tissue. So connective tissue is what it sounds like. It connects us. Bone, fat, muscle, and the parts that connect bone to each other. And so skin is predominantly a connective tissue. It has an important barrier function. And then it has this function of what really is structural support throughout the body. Mm-hmm. If you pinch yourself, you're not really pinching the barrier. You're pinching the what's underneath the barrier, which is predominantly what we refer to as extracellular matrix. It's proteins that certain cells in the skin make to create the physical structure of the skin below the barrier. The way that has been designed is that with the passage of time or with environmental damage, those structural proteins undergo fragmentation. They break down. And the skin does not have typically a very robust way to fix that problem. So with the passage of time, with chronic sun exposure, there's accumulation of this damage. And that's really what we refer to the aged phenotype, the way that aged skin looks. When we look at somebody and their skin has lost elasticity or smoothness, it's because of the underlying connective tissue that composes the skin and the fragmentation of the structural proteins that is causing, perceptible changes in the quality of the skin. There's this problem with the structure, and that's communicated with the cells that depend on that structure for function. The cells, as Jesse mentioned, live within this structure, and they depend on connections, direct connections with the structure to function. When the structure is broken, they lose those connections, and now they're confused about what to do. They can't function optimally, and so they are wired in such a way that instead of repairing the problem, seeing, well, let's fix this problem, they just sort of say, well, this is not good, and make the problem worse.
So maybe is that where, I don't know, based on your guys' research, maybe that's where we can come in and do something to fight against either, I like we said earlier about repair versus just ongoing maintenance.
Yeah, exactly.
From your research, what are some of the things that we can do to fight against the influences of some negative effects of exposomes, everything but genetics, or when things are the structure's starting to break, or even if we're before that, but we want to do everything we can to stop that from happening? What are some of the things that our listeners can be doing that, listen, I can learn from you guys about what to do?
I mentioned earlier that, he's got studies showing kind of on the same person, sun exposed areas or exposed areas to the exposome, sun protected areas. And then just like he was talking about, markers that he could look at on, cellular, vitality, cellular health, the matrix they live in. Those protected areas they look much healthier than sun exposed areas. And so you see us talking about aging now in terms of healthier. And that's, a lot of times you say, well, it's a hard kind of thing to define. What is health? Is that an end state? But I think healthier. And I would say that age, though, is maybe a harder thing to determine. Because if you look at, again, on the same person that has a biologically, they're the same age, looking at your face or looking at your, underarm or whatever, it's the same age. But when you start to track it on markers of how healthy things are, then you see a big difference. So there's this concept of, and you'll see it in other areas of research around Healthspan and so forth, these concepts of biological age and chronological age. But we like to think about it more of, well, how healthy is it compared to something else as a comparator. Then you start to move into what do we do about it? Because if it's just age alone, there's nothing you can do about it. It's age. Age is age. But if you think about it in terms of the state of what's happening, now we have some ideas. And I think, like Gary, talked about before, cells that are in touch with, other ones, they seem to be more healthy than if they're just out by themselves. So those are things that we can start to get insight into on how we might be able to kind of, kick them back on.
So this podcast is called Habits in Healthspan, right? And I try to work with my kids on the habit of washing their face at night and in the morning, right? So what are some, maybe give us 3 habits that we can start to implement to sort of speak to the things that you're talking about when it comes to protecting or strengthening the barrier and other things like that. Can you give 3 potential habits that we could start implementing?
So as we mentioned, skin is damaged by the environment, so protection against the environment. So that involves sunscreens and moisturizers to protect the barrier. I think those are, and cleanliness, as you mentioned. I think those are 3 important habits that everybody should have all the time. I also think, we're talking about skin being part of the whole body. And as we know, nutrition and exercise are good for us. And those are also good for the skin. So thinking about treating your whole body with some respect and attention to health is also a good way to keep your skin healthy.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think, those basics, we can't forget the basics. I think, when we talk about skin too, I think a lot of people tend to go toward facial skin, what other people can see, but it's your whole body. And if we only, think about just the face or what people can see, that's a small part of the barrier function of the skin. And so when we move into the fall, we got really dry skin and so forth. That's over the whole body. And so you're losing a lot of moisture from inside the body through. But not only are we losing moisture outside, we're opening up. So if you have dry skin, you're opening your barrier. It's like opening the door to allow these things, like Gary said, those environment, those exposomal things to get in now too. The other thing I would say, and I want to touch on this briefly because it is always fascinating to me, but that bridge between exercise and skin, that's not really known a lot about right now, but he's embarking on that space. And it occurs to me that one of the things that people think about when we're dealing with healthier versus age, and again, we talked about that before, but healthier is a comparator because age is set and age is just time that goes by. That's a set thing, but healthiness isn't necessarily set. It's what you can do to prevent it, what you can do to reel it back in. And so one of the things that people tend to see when they notice skin unhealthiness, or let's just say age, because people think in terms of that, is non-uniformity. As we age, though, those things start to change, and people visually start to think about that non-uniformity. So you get a wrinkle. It's not uniform anymore. It stands out. So now it's remarkable. We think about a spot showing up. Again, it's remarkable. Now that's like, we lose fat from the cheeks. We get it here. That, again, is a facial shape change that indicates something is not, in an ideal health state. And so I think, like Gary mentioned, there's probably something to this concept in the future of this interface between exercise and what people visually construe as healthy skin. So trying to keep the skin looking more uniform over time, I think will be a signal that, hey, that person has a healthier look to them than someone else. So
That's really great. I'm going to start referring to my wrinkles as remarkable.
I really like the distinction that you're making, Jesse, about how we're referring to skin that's aging as maybe skin that's behaving in a healthier and unhealthier way.
Right.
I think that's a great sort of mental shift that we can make, and that's one thing we can walk away with.
Yeah.
As we're thinking about the aging process, just based on your research, what is one of the biggest or easiest things that we can do to assist our skin in positively affecting that healthy aging?
Well, I'd say, just like we talked about it, number one, like any of these things, whether we're talking about the skin, we're talking about, brain health, mobility, all of these things, preventative, prevention, make sure that, from a young age, we're taking care of it. We wear our sunscreen. We're protected from that. We remove the pollution things from the day with great, cleansing products. Be gentle to it. Don't be harsh. Don't use, because you can get physical abrasion is a very damaging thing. So, a washcloth, scrubbing the face, bad idea. So that's going to be always your number one go-to. Make sure that you're doing those things up front to keep it healthy first.
Old saying, you're never too old. The body, the cells have the capacity to respond to appropriate treatments, exercise, nutrition, moisturizers, retinoids. So at any age, those are good things to do. starting at a younger age is even better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's one thing that I love so much about what you said is that's sort of one of our beliefs here on the Habits and Healthspan podcast, that regardless of what age you are, it's never too early to start doing something. And even if you're starting a little bit later, 10 years from now, you're going to be glad you started 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this has just been a fascinating conversation about skin. I feel like I'm equipped and ready to take these habits, but also my curiosity is so piqued on the health span of skin in general. And so I'm really grateful for both of you and your willingness to share your research and insight with us today.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
And thanks to all of you at home for listening. Make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube and follow Amway on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, remember, your skin is your biggest organ, so you should be its biggest fan. Take care.